Meditation, or spirituality in general, is one of the most vast and profound topics out there, with countless techniques available. However, there is one technique that I deem especially useful for beginners and advanced people alike, depending on the situation, of course. It is the technique of making mental notes of whatever happens during meditation. Sometimes some monks call it mantra meditation, but that term is kind of overloaded. Let us now have a look at why this technique is so powerful, and let us begin with a small example. Well, let us think back of times when we were studying for school or university. Think back to times when you studied something without the solutions to the tasks available, and then think back to when you had the solutions available. Chances are there was a very big difference in how you approached the exercises. Our brains in general have a nasty tendency to rationalize that we knew it all along and know how it worked, and justify having a look at the solutions of the problem before we actually solve the problems ourselves to speed things up. We are very impatient after all. However, this ruins the entire learning effect, and this whole process of rationalization and seeking for shortcuts is present everywhere whenever our brains are involved, and our brains are involved in everything. Okay, but how does this actually translate to meditation? Well, it is basically the very same thing. In meditation, we try to be mindful of whatever is there while trying to avoid pre-existing concepts in our mind. Well, if we might have a look at a small picture to illustrate what those concepts are. Here we have two faces that are about to kiss, or a vase in the middle. Depending on the concepts in our mind, we either see the two faces or the vase in the middle. We cannot really see the two things at once. We are always occupied with the concepts that are always in our mind, and we can't really avoid thinking in those terms. When we try to be mindful, we try to avoid those things. And most of the time, we don't even realize that we just think in concepts and don't really see what is in front of us. So we can prevent this from happening if we keep ourselves accountable to a degree. Whenever we try to be mindful, we can try to apply a mental label to the experience that describes it reasonably well. When we see something, we can say in our minds seeing. When we hear something, we say in our minds hearing. Just to keep ourselves with the experience and keep us accountable in a sense. We conduct an experiment and automatically measure if there is any difference between the mental model and the things we perceive in the real world. Thus, we notice if there is just a concept that gets triggered, or if we are actually perceiving reality. Oftentimes, labels and reality do not match at all, and we realize that very fast by making the mental notes, and thus we can make adjustments and try a little bit harder. Like with learning in general, mental labels give us a tool to assess if we are doing things right. And when in meditation, you can try it for yourself and see if it works. Whenever you breathe in, direct your attention to the object of meditation, aka the breath if you use the breath, or anything else, and say in your mind, breathing in when you breathe in, while you apply your mind to the sensation of breathing. When breathing out, you stick with your mind to the object of meditation and watch what happens, and say, breathing out. When you get distracted, try to label the distraction in the same way as distracted or distraction or annoyed, frustrated, angry, or whatever emotions arise that grab your attention. Just label everything that happens. In that way, you realize what is really going on in your mind and not just look at the solution, in a sense, and rationalize that you are doing it right all along. Whatever arises in your mind, try to apply a short and precise mental label. But usually the first word that comes to your mind is good enough. And you can repeat that process until you are very concentrated. And if you try to enter the high states of mind, the jhanas, you have to drop the labels since they interrupt that process. Okay, but let us now come to a summary. What are the most important points? Being mindful, inside and outside of formal meditation, is hard. And our brains constantly try to convince us that we are doing it right already. And this can partially be avoided by applying mental labels to the experiences we have. They force us to look really close at what is happening and not just act like it. In the end, our brains often tell us a story about reality and not perceive reality itself. And the labeling process is an experiment that allows us to directly see when we were wrong. And all in all, a lot of people make very fast progress with mindfulness and insight once they start labeling seriously. This is not just a technique for beginners. It is a technique that is used by all kinds of meditators and people around the globe. Okay, and that is pretty much it for today. Thank you very much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, feel free to leave it a thumbs up and maybe subscribe to the YouTube channel. If you feel like I missed something, feel free to let me know in the comment section so that other people can benefit from your wisdom. But until then, I wish you a pleasant day and goodbye.